All right, today we're going to try and unpack one of the most disturbing enigmas of our time. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and an empire that was built entirely on shadows and secrets. So, where does this story even begin? Well, it starts out in the Caribbean Sea, on this small, private island. And, to anyone looking from the outside, it was pure paradise. Think blue ocean, white sand, the whole deal. But it was also surrounded by high security fences. And that idyllic scene, well, it was a complete facade. So, who was the man at the very center of this web? His name was Jeffrey Epstein. And publicly, he was this larger than life billionaire financier, a card carrying member of the global elite. But his real story, that was buried deep in the shadows for a very, very long time. Okay, so to really understand this whole enigma, we have to start by looking at the crimes themselves. I mean, these are the actions that finally brought this hidden world crashing right into the public view. And the operation? It was chillingly systematic. Here's how it allegedly worked. Young girls were lured to the island with these false promises of money, of jobs, of help. They walk into this world of incredible luxury, but it was a trap. A world where law and consent, well, they just didn't seem to matter. It all started to unravel when a few teenage girls down in Palm Beach, Florida were brave enough to file the first complaints. And just like that, a local crime story exploded into a massive global scandal, which eventually led to his 2019 arrest for sex trafficking. But, to really understand the crime, you have to understand the man behind it. And that brings us to the first huge mystery in this story, his improbable, you could almost say impossible rise from being a school teacher to a Wall Street power player. So let's go all the way back. Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York, and there was nothing extraordinary about his beginnings. I mean, no royal family, no inherited business empire. His dad was a government employee, his mom was a school assistant. By all accounts, it was just a perfectly ordinary middle-class American family. And his education? Just as unremarkable. He went to college for a bit, but never actually finished his degree. So, no formal training in finance, no fancy MBA from some elite school. And yet, Somehow, this guy would soon be sitting at the table with some of the world's most powerful people. It just doesn't add up. I mean, just look at the timeline of his ascent. It's truly baffling. In the early 70s, he's teaching math and physics at a really prestigious private school. This is where he gets his first taste of New York's elite. Then, boom, 1976, he suddenly quits and lands a job at a top investment bank on Wall Street. And by 1980, we're talking just 4 years later, he's already established himself as a high-level money manager for the ultra-rich. So this brings us to the central question, one that still baffles investigators to this day. How does a teacher with no degree and no track record make that kind of leap into the closed-off world of high finance? And so quickly. It defies all logic. And that question leads us directly to the next huge puzzle piece, the money. Where did his immense and intensely private fortune actually come from? Okay, just think about the contrast here for a second. With a typical billionaire, you can trace their wealth, right? It's in public companies, stock holdings. But Epstein's world? It was the complete opposite. It was this tangled maze of opaque trusts, shell corporations, and basically untraceable cash flow. And he ran it all from private mansions, not some corporate headquarters. Right away, that is a massive red flag. I mean, in the world of finance, transparency is supposed to be the norm. But Epstein's entire model was built for the exact opposite, total secrecy. And his excuse was pretty clever. He'd just say, oh, I only work for ultra-rich clients, and they demand privacy. And you know what? It was the perfect cover. Now, there is one huge piece of this puzzle we have to talk about, and that's his relationship with Leslie Wexner, a major American billionaire. For reasons that are still debated, Wexner gave Epstein this extraordinary level of control over his finances. He even granted him power of attorney, which is basically like handing over the keys to your entire financial kingdom. This connection seems to be the moment that Epstein's life changed, like overnight. And yet, the mystery just keeps getting deeper. Because financial experts have pointed this out again and again. There's no major hedge fund attached to his name, no famous IPO, no big public financial success story that you can point to and say, that's where the money came from. The cash was clearly flowing in, but a visible public source for it? It just didn't seem to exist. So this really forces us to ask a pretty fundamental question. what was Jeffrey Epstein's actual business? Because it's starting to look like it wasn't finance in any traditional sense of the word. A lot of people who investigated him believe he was what you'd call a power broker. See, his real currency wasn't money. It wasn't stocks or bonds. It was influence. It was access. His whole business was about connecting powerful people to other powerful people. And his entire operation was, well, it was completely unconventional. I mean, forget about a big glass tower for a headquarters or thousands of employees. His office was a lavish, massive mansion in New York. And meetings? They didn't happen in sterile boardrooms. They happened in private homes, on jets, and on that island. All places designed for one thing: absolute confidentiality. When you break it down, his method was deceptively simple. So, step one, he'd target these ultra-high net worth individuals, the ones who demanded total privacy above all else. Step two, he'd provide that. He'd create a space, a world, completely away from public scrutiny. Then, step three, he'd connect these powerful people. Think politicians to billionaires, scientists to donors, and finally, step four, he becomes the indispensable guy in the middle, the ultimate gatekeeper for all of these high-level introductions. So, when you start to put all these pieces together, right, the strange career path, the mysterious money, this weird business of connections, a much clearer picture starts to emerge. You see, his real product, it was never actually finance. It was secrecy. That's what he was selling. He sold privacy, he sold access, and he sold the ability to operate in the shadows. Finance? That was just the perfect cover story for something much, much darker. So in the end, he wasn't just some advisor. He was a gatekeeper. He was the one who controlled the information, who controlled the access, who controlled the privacy for some of the most powerful people on the planet. And that role, well, that gave him an incredible amount of power, with absolutely no public accountability. And all of this leaves us with the ultimate unanswered question. Was Jeffrey Epstein a self-made financial genius? A mastermind who built this entire empire of secrets and crime all on his own? Or was he simply a pawn, a facilitator in a much larger, much darker game? And that right there is the question that remains at the very heart of the Epstein Enigma.